In the spotlight is South Korean international, the reigning South Korean Player of the Year, Min Jae-kim, who admitted that he doesn't like being the center of attention, feels that there are a lot of other players that ultimately are more popular and more famous as footballers. He named Thomas Müller, Manuel Neuer and Jamal Musiala. But the fact is, he is going to get his fair share of attention here today. There is Jamal Musiala. Like Thomas Müller, has recently joined up with the Bayern team following his exploits at Euro 2024 and able to make the trip to South Korea as a result. Of course, there are a few media duties for the players to get involved with as well. Tomorrow we've got the big friendly against Tottenham, the South Korean showdown between Heung-min Son and Min Jae-kim. The tickets sold out in a mere matter of minutes when they went online. And the fact is, something tells me they could have sold out the Seoul World Cup Stadium at least twice over, given the amount of demand. The reception the players received was fantastic to see. We have had a star-studded lineup in pre-season, but as the players like Manuel Neuer begin to return from their summer holidays, the squad begins to fill up. The level of quality rises even further. But it is great to see Manuel Neuer back in action after a summer in which Bayern fell short against Spain in their home European Championships. Their journey ending in the quarter-finals. But oh, what could have been had Mikel Merino not scored that late winner for Spain. Germany, the only team that Spain failed to beat over the course of 90 minutes. Not much Manuel Neuer, though, could do about that late winner. And now attention turns to club football, club action, club preparations as well. You might have been tuned in to the press conference before this live training session got underway. Min Jae-kim and Vincent Kompany both fielding questions from the press. And the message really from Kompany was that last season does not define where players are for this season. And he says he expects a reaction. Mathys Tel, someone who has featured prominently in pre-season already. Certainly quite hot temperatures in Seoul as well. I can tell you that the stadium announcer that normally features at the Allianz Arena, Stefan Lehmann, has made the trip to South Korea as well, so he's lending his voice to proceedings here today, though he does have a South Korean counterpart that has proven just as good at drumming up the hype for those in attendance. Of course, not everyone has the opportunity to be in attendance in Seoul, South Korea. And so for those of you joining us online via Facebook or YouTube, welcome to the stream. Thanks very much for being here. Delighted to have you along. And I always do say that if you fancy getting in touch, if you want to send in a question, a comment, then feel free, because the more interaction, the merrier in streams like this. And it is always lovely to hear from the Bayern fans. We have such a diverse fan base. Always a nice, easy question to start off with. Where in the world are you tuning in from? Put a flag in the chat or type it out if you want, because admittedly, my flag knowledge is good, but it doesn't cover every flag in the world. And now you see the wry smile from Min Jae-kim as his name is announced, and he may not like the attention, but he's going to get it. Thomas Müller, someone that enjoys the attention a little bit more, I think. Müller was at his Muller best. Had a media commitment yesterday. Tried out some of his South Korean. That is one of the reasons he is a fan favourite. Min Jae Kim, right now the star of the show here in Seoul. I've got people tuning in from Iraq, India, Romania, Albania, Ghana, Lithuania as well. And again, thanks for tuning in. It is always a delight just to see how diverse Bayern's fan base is. The fact is, with the start of the 2024-25 season just around the corner now, we are literally 14 days, so 2 weeks removed from Bayern's first game of the season in the DFB Pokal first round against SSV Ulm, a side that have been promoted to the Zweite Bundesliga this season, but a club that have a lot of history, a lot of tradition behind them. And so it's quite the mouth-watering encounter that Bayern have to kick off their campaign. After that, you've got the trip to Wolfsburg, where they will open their Bundesliga season. And the first home game of the campaign at the Allianz Arena. And the guests on that occasion will be SC Freiburg, a team that will be quite new look, given the fact that they have lost their long-time head coach, Christian Streich. Such an influential figure. It'll be very interesting to see how they shape up for the new season. In terms of head coaches, there is the new man at the helm for Bayern München, Vincent Kompany. Was talking to the press before this training session, saying if you look back at the best years of Bayern in the 11 years that they won titles in a row, most of the time it wasn't because they just had the best defenders. And he said it was all down to the high pressing, the fact that players reacted quickly, and then that all 11 players were involved in every phase of play. And that was in answer to a question about Bayern's defensive record last season, something, of course, as a former centre-back and an elite centre-back at that himself, I'm sure that's something that Vincent Kompany will be looking to address. But as he points out, as a team effort, it doesn't just come down to one or two players. Potatoes asking if Harry Kane can do a backflip. Well, I don't know. I doubt it right now. But he's not on the trip to South Korea. He is one of the players that has stayed home or on holiday in his case, given the fact that he did make it all the way to the final of Euro 2024. Unfortunately for him, it was the same result as it was against Italy when they faced Spain this summer. Nevertheless, a player that will be hungry to bounce back from what took place over the course of the campaign and over the course of the summer as well. But really, that statement goes for many of these Bayern players after the first trophyless season since 2012. A chance to bounce back, to get back amongst the silverware, to respond in kind, and ultimately show the reaction that Vincent Kompany is looking for in terms of the desire levels, the hunger levels to re-establish Bayern amongst the titles. I mean, just look at the conditions there, the sweat rolling off the face of Eric Dyer and Joshua Kimmich. High temperatures, high intensity. Bay saying, Jamal Musiala, please. He is in attendance. He is there. The players that haven't travelled, Harry Kane, Alphonso Davies, Kingsley Coman, Daya Upamecano, and Leroy Sané, who is doing individual training, but it was thought that on the back of his groin operation this summer that it'd be better if he continued his preparations in Germany as opposed to making the quite exhausting and demanding trip to South Korea. This is Bayern's first ever trip to South Korea as well. This part of the Audi Summer Tour 2024. Team flying out a couple of days ago. Last night, they were treated to South Korean barbecue courtesy of Min Jae Kim, who travelled out a few days earlier than the rest of the squad to spend some time with his family. A rare opportunity for him to take part in pre-season in his home country of South Korea. And there you go, Faye, you asked for Jamal Musiala, and Jamal Musiala is delivered. Hugo Richter asking, are any new transfers confirmed? And the answer to that is no. We've got 4 transfers made already this summer, if you want to include the young Australian Nestori Irankunda, who has travelled with the squad. He's one of the youngsters that has impressed during pre-season and as a result has made the trip to South Korea. The others being Noel Eseko, Adam Asnu, Javier Fernandez and Adin Lichina. Jamal Musiala remembers what it was like to be one of the young players on a pre-season tour, but now he is one of the players that the current youngsters are looking up to. And we see Brian Zaragoza sporting the new silver-haired look. The Spaniard. Again, one of the first names on the team sheet for Bayern during pre-season under Vincent Kompany, but is going to have a lot more competition coming his way when everyone is fully fit and the squad is back to full strength right now. He and Serge Gnabry are the wingers in principle. But to go back to the summer transfers, Irankunda brought in from Adelaide United. João Paulinho, the Portuguese international, joining from Fulham. Another player who is now on the Bayern books, joining from the Premier League, is Michael Olise from Crystal Palace, though he is not currently taking part in pre-season, as he is taking part in the Olympics with France, where they have made it through the group stages of the men's football tournament, the final of which takes place on the 9th of August. So if they do make it all the way to the final, as is expected, they will... Well, Michael Olise will not join up with the Bayern team until afterwards. And so shortly before that first game in the DFB Pokal first round against SSV Ulm. And the other, of course, summer signing is Hiroki Ito, who would have been on this trip were it not for the fact that he has broken a bone in his foot. An injury suffered in the 1-1 draw with Erste FC Düren, which will keep him out for a number of weeks, potentially months. So we wish him a speedy recovery. Same could be said of Arihon Ibrahimovic, who has unfortunately suffered a slight tear in his hamstring, and as a result, he too has not made the trip to South Korea. Leon Goretzka missed out on a place in the German national team for Euro 2024. You talk about players that are going to be hungry to prove themselves in the upcoming campaign. And he's one of them that's at the top of the list, no doubt. But already catching the eye in pre-season. Has had a lot of time to already work with Vincent Kompany in a way that some of his other teammates won't have. Now, Gustas is asking, where is Paulinho? Well, I reckon he is in the mix somewhere. He's got to be. He made the trip. Just got to be eagle-eyed in these situations sometimes when it comes to the camera work done by those on site. There he is, actually, just to the left of Leon Goretzka there. Another question to you, the viewers. It was Jamal Musiala and Sven Ulreich that were asked about who their all-time favourite Bayern players are. Jamal Musiala said his current teammate Thomas Müller. Sven Ulreich said Bastian Schweinsteiger. Can't really argue with either of those answers, but tell me, who is your favourite Bayern player of all time? Can be past or present. We can go way back in history, or we can pick one of the current crop of players. Grant pointing out in the chat that Olise is playing great in the Olympics right now. That he is. A goal and an assist against the USA, an assist against Guinea as well. Very exciting player. And really is catching the eye under Thierry Henry with France at their home Olympics. But it is Min Jae Kim who is at home here in South Korea. As mentioned, he is the reigning South Korean Player of the Year. Heung-min Son won it for the last 4 years in a row before Kim pipped him to the post after winning the Serie A title with Napoli. Centre-back who believes he has a fair few similarities with Vincent Kompany, a player that was amongst the best in Europe's top 5 leagues when it comes to forward passes as well. And Kim said that 2023 was the most special year of his life, but that it shouldn't stop there. The aim is to always improve, but he does admit that it was probably his best year yet. Fortunately, 2024 has not been as kind to him. Lost his place in the Bayern ranks after featuring for South Korea at the Asian Cup. And then a few injuries prevented him from breaking back into the first team. As a result, it was Eric Dyer and Matthijs de Ligt who made up the centre-back pairing. De Ligt, another who hasn't made the trip to South Korea, though he has been training at Zebenstrasse in Munich. Vincent Kompany, 4-time Premier League winner, 4-time League Cup winner, 2-time FA Cup winner with Manchester City, and a 2-time Belgian League winner with Anderlecht. Not to mention 89 caps with the Belgian national team. He is a man who certainly knows what it takes to thrive at the highest level of world football. Still relatively unproven as a head coach. Has spent time with Anderlecht and, of course, more recently Burnley, where he guided them to promotion from the Championship to the Premier League, and unfortunately suffered relegation back to the second tier in their first season in England's top flight. But there was a clearly defined style of play that Burnley tried to stay true to in the Premier League, and that was ultimately their downfall, because Burnley didn't quite have the quality or the players needed to execute Kompany's vision at the highest level against the very best that English football has to offer. However, he has very different pieces for his puzzle with Bayern. The quality much higher. And it was an interesting statement from Max Abel, who talked about the fact that Vincent Kompany might only have 4 years of coaching experience, but in his head, given the fact that he was the extended arm of Pep Guardiola on the pitch, that in his head, Kompany has been a head coach for 8, 9, or maybe even 10 years now, and that he can bring that wealth of experience to the table. But now, I did ask a question earlier about your favourite Bayern player of all time. Some great answers coming in on both YouTube and Facebook. Arjen Robben, Franz Beckenbauer, Manuel Neuer, Musiala, Robben by a mile, says Nast1X. And in fairness, Robben is getting a fair few shouts in both chats. Banger saying my favourite player of all time is Thomas Müller, but my best player of all time would be Franz Beckenbauer. So maybe a head and heart discussion there, because Thomas Müller is certainly someone that wins a lot of people over. But Franz Beckenbauer, I mean, you can't deny the legendary status that Der Kaiser had. A man we said farewell to at the beginning of this year as well. But a man ultimately who continues to be honoured by the work that Bayern do at the highest level, work that was inspired by him and his vision back in the day. Marcus says it's sad about Muller's retirement from the DFB, the German national team, and yes it is, but I mean, my goodness, what a glorious career he had with the German national team. ...128 appearances, 45 goals. incredible highlights at several World Cups. So the Euros never really seemed to be his tournament. And I'm sure he would have loved to bow out on a higher note than finishing in the quarterfinals with a knockout against Spain. But nevertheless, Thomas Müller still has at least one season left to play on Bayern's books. And keep an eye out this season, because Thomas Müller is going to be sending a ton of records tumbling. He's currently second in the all-time appearance makers list behind Sepp Maier, but is just a couple of appearances short of breaking the all-time appearance record for Bayern in all competitions. This is going to be a very special season for Thomas Müller. But given the fact that he is a one-club wonder, 473 appearances in the Bundesliga, 707 all told. Absolutely incredible numbers. He is the poster boy for what a Bayern Academy product can be. And as said, he has signed a contract extension through to 2025. But a man who has the nickname of Radio Müller, or Radio Müller, I think it's a fair assumption that he might end up on the sidelines of a football pitch in his later career as a head coach in some capacity, because it seems like a career path he's destined for. Of course, if he wants it, he may be happy tending to his horses with wife Lisa, playing golf. But something tells me Thomas Müller is a man who lives and breathes the day in, day out of life at the highest level of football. Littlefinger asking, where is Sané? Now, Leroy Sané, I can tell you, Littlefinger is not in South Korea. He is still doing his individual training sessions at Zebenstrasse in Munich after undergoing a groin operation in the summer. He was, of course, playing through the pain a lot last season, and as a result felt that going under the knife might help him in the current campaign. But as a result, he is having to take more time with his recovery. That's why they didn't want to put him on a long flight to South Korea as well. Instead, better to keep him mobile in Munich. So I hope that answers your question, Littlefinger. The hope is that he will be fit in time for the start of the season, whether that be the game against Ulm in the DFB Pokal first round on August 16th, or whether it be the game against Wolfsburg on the 25th of August. The following weekend remains to be seen. Bayern had a rather favourable start to the campaign in the Bundesliga. When you look at the fixtures, Wolfsburg away from home, then at home against Freiburg in the first game at the Allianz Arena, then back-to-back away games against Holstein Kiel and Werder Bremen in the north of Germany before the blockbuster tie. Match day 5. That's how early we're being treated to it. But match day 5, Saturday, the 28th of September, in the Topspiel spot here in Germany, the 6:30 kickoff in the evening. And it is the reigning Bundesliga champions, Bayer Leverkusen, who are coming to visit Munich. The reigning title holders against the record title holders. Bayern with a point to prove and a chance as early as match day 5 to already send a signal of intent in a title race that they want to win come the end of this season. Again, people still letting us know where in the world they're tuning in from. Indonesia. They're having a bit of fun. Out there are the Bayern players, it has to be said. And it's nice to see. People getting in touch from Bangladesh, Wales as well. Grant also writing in the chat, Thomas Müller is the greatest Bayern and German player of all time. Neuer, Beckenbauer, Maier, Lahm, Schweinsteiger, Matthias Rummenigge, and so many more come close, but Müller takes the prize. Grant then says, that being said, Robin is my favourite, so take his assessment with a pinch of salt. But yeah, I think genuinely, don't get me wrong, the numbers back up Thomas Müller's claim to being the GOAT, the greatest of all time. But there are so many players that have had a huge influence on this team throughout the years. Not to mention his namesake, Gerd Müller, lest we forget. I mean, I don't think anyone ever is going to take Gerd Müller's title of being the greatest German goal scorer of all time, the greatest finisher of all time, given his incredible goal-scoring feats and records, but Thomas Müller, in terms of being a one-club wonder, in terms of his breakthrough from the academy under Louis van Gaal as a teenager to now his status as the elder statesman at 34 years old, where he is still so highly regarded, his popularity around the world is undeniable. I can understand why a lot of you are putting GOAT in the chat, because I couldn't agree more. For me, there are few that hold a torch to him. Kevin Murphy says we're expecting a lot from Bayern this season. Don't disappoint. Well, that's the aim. The good news is for Vincent Kompany, he has a blanker slate than many a Bayern head coach have had in the past. Not just because he's unproven at the highest level of head coaching, but also because Bayern didn't win a single title last season. It's not something that happens too often. The demands at Bayern are to win, 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 and that includes silverware, trophies. It is the demands that Vincent Kompany is familiar with from his playing career with Manchester City, where Pep Guardiola would have instilled the same winning mentality as he will be looking to bring to the table here with Bayern. But they'll want to get the Bundesliga title back off Bayer Leverkusen. The same goes for the DFB Pokal, which they haven't won since 2020. And of course, lest we forget, and we shouldn't forget because it's such a significant part of this season, there's a certain Champions League final going to be held at the Allianz Arena later this season. Now, Bayern fans won't need reminding that Bayern have once before played a Champions League final on home soil in Munich at the Allianz Arena. That game back in 2012. It was known as the Finale daheim. And again, remember, 2012 was the last season where Bayern didn't win a single title, and they got so close in the Champions League, they had their hands on it before a Didier Drogba header broke hearts, sent the tie to a penalty shootout, which was ultimately won by Chelsea. And a night that was meant to be filled with unique, once-in-a-lifetime celebrations in Munich. Instead, you walk through the city after that night and you could hear a pin drop. So the hope is that maybe there might be some redemption in the offing for Bayern this season. Another Finale daheim. Finale daheim 2.0. Can Vincent Kompany guide Bayern to the Champions League final in his first season in charge? Breaking down into some smaller drills. But as we've seen in many of the training sessions at Sebener a lot of the focus is on work in tight spaces, dealing with pressure being applied, breaking the lines, running off the shoulder of the last man, as we saw Matthijs Tel do to great effect there. But first you've got to win the rondo. All into feet. And now who's ready to finish? It should have been Iran Kunda. Gnabry whiffing at it as well, and Iran Kunda puts it in the end. Now Grant asking in the chat, am I enjoying South Korea, or are they keeping me at home? I can tell you they have kept me at home on this occasion. But do not begrudge the people that are out there enjoying the trip to South Korea. It must be a wonderful place to visit. Fortunately for me, having a wife and child at home means it's not as easy to take a long-haul trip across to Asia. Nevertheless, we get to enjoy training sessions like this. We'll, of course, have coverage of the friendly against Tottenham live on FC Bayern TV Plus, which if you haven't subscribed to yet, I would highly recommend it, Bayern fans, because you get a whole host of behind-the-scenes content, very unique content as well, everything from training videos to post-match interviews or one-on-one sit-downs, and then, of course, live coverage of these pre-season friendlies. We've had two already. The first against Ortach Egen, a 14-1 win for Bayern. And the second, a 1-1 draw against 1. FC Düren, a fourth-tier side that are already kicked off their campaign and as a result made that game a lot more competitive. Now, though, Bayern taking on Tottenham, and Vincent Kompany talking in his press conference about the fact that Spurs, as they're nicknamed, have already had about 4 highly competitive fixtures. So, of course, they're going to be a little further along in their preparations than Bayern. But he said ultimately the priority for Bayern is to build the team's fitness. And he said while his players, he'll accept them not being 100% physically fit, he won't accept them not being 100% mentally fit. Still a lot of love for Musiala and Thomas Müller in the chat. And then questions coming in as well, a couple I've seen already. When will Harry Kane be back in camp, and whether he was going to be playing against Tottenham on August 10th. Right now, he hasn't made the trip to South Korea, so he won't be taking on Tottenham tomorrow. And the way Vincent Kompany was talking about Harry Kane suggested that he might not feature in pre-season, but he would potentially be ready for that first round of the DFB Pokal against SSV Ulm. It is a shame because, of course, taking on Tottenham would have been a chance to take on his former club where he made a name for himself and claimed legendary status. Talk about Gerd Müller being an elite finisher. Same could be said of Harry Kane. Incredible turnout as well here at the Seoul World Cup Stadium, which will be sold out tomorrow. Could have been sold out a couple of times over, I'm sure, based on the demand for tickets. Josip asking whether Giovanni Elba is in Seoul as a club ambassador. I'll be honest, Josip, I don't know. So I'm not going to pretend I do. But there is a chance, because they normally do take a legend or two with them on these trips, Bayern München. Nitish saying, I want to see Kane lift a trophy and Bayern to win the Bundesliga in dominating fashion. It really would be nice, wouldn't it? Harry Kane might have come to join Bayern thinking that he'd pick up a title or two, but the first season didn't quite go according to plan, and that was not down to his efforts at all, which were exemplary. Recently celebrated his 31st birthday as well, so in case he's tuning into this live stream, happy birthday, Harry Kane. And Jamal Musiala was in great goal-scoring form for Germany during the Euros. He'll be hoping to continue that into the season for Bayern. Of course, he ended the season quite strong as well after maybe not quite herring out of the blocks the way we expected him to. The goals weren't as free-flowing initially, but they certainly arrived come the end of the season, where he broke double digits once again in all competitions. And Marie Huber is asking a question that unfortunately I cannot answer, and the reason being we don't discuss transfer speculation on streams like this. We deal with done deals and done deals only. So unfortunately, we cannot comment on speculation at all. Although I do believe the player in question that you're asking about, a decision has already been made on that front. But we prefer to only talk about players that are on Bayern's books right now, and we've got so much talent that it's not exactly difficult to talk about them. Injuries were certainly an issue last season, so the question is, can they avoid those same problems in the coming campaign? Someone like Serge Gnabry, who normally would have had such a big role to play, as we see Thomas Müller there scoring against not one but two goalkeepers. That's just how good he is. A little bit of finishing practice for the fans to enjoy here in South Korea. But the likes of Serge Gnabry, who had such injury-hit seasons. I think it was a fractured arm, it was a thigh and muscular issues as well for him. A lot of these Bayern players would just be hoping to stay fully fit for the full campaign. And then the competition for places is rife. Just look at the centre-back role alone. Min-Jae Kim, Matthijs de Ligt, Dayot Upamecano, Eric Dyer, Hiroki Ito in the mix as well. Though unfortunately, as mentioned earlier, a broken bone in his foot means that his start to life as a Bayern player, not off on the best foot, no pun intended. But it was club president Herbert Hainer who said that the biggest challenge is that Bayern must always follow the Bayern path, and that is without major investors as well. And a lot of talk, including from President Herbert Hainer, about relying more on the academy. But Max Ebel, the board director of sport, Christoph Freund, the sporting director, Vincent Kompany, the head coach, have all talked about implementing young players. Josip Stanisic right now is one of just 3 Bayern players in the senior squad that have come through the academy, the other 2 being Alexander Pavlovic and Jamal Musiala, of course. But they want more of that. You think of the likes of Thomas Muller, Philipp Lahm, David Alaba. I always do that. Always do that with his name. It's just such instinct to pronounce it the German way. But for a couple of years now, Bayern haven't quite been bringing through the youth players like they used to, and as a result, they want to put more focus on that. That's why they're so excited about some of the young prospects. Vincent Kompany saying that he's getting a good impression of some of these young players. And we mentioned that the teenagers that have made the trip to South Korea: Noel Aseko, Adam Asnu, Javier Fernandez, who I have to say, for me, he has been the most impressive teenager in pre-season. Adin Lacina has, of course, scored a couple of goals, bagged a brace in that 14-1 win against Rotach Egen. He scored the first 2 goals that Bayern scored in that game and had a hand in plenty of others, whether it was with the final pass or not. But Javier Fernandez, in terms of his physical stature as a holding midfielder, I think offers a lot of promise for the future. So he is one to watch. Adam Asnu, you have to say, impressed at left back after coming on for Hiroki Ito after he got injured against FC Düren. And so the fact is, there are several young players right now that Bayern fans can get excited about, that the Bayern bosses can be confident can maybe make the breakthrough at some point to become fully fledged Bayern players. Because it's not an easy step to make. Jamal Musiala made it look easy, but that's because Jamal Musiala is Jamal Musiala. He has the type of footballing talent that many of us can only dream of. And Marcus asking whether I play football, and yes, recreationally, but unfortunately a pretty nasty knee injury did me in. Not that I say that as if I ever would have gone on to a professional career or anything. Absolutely not. I was a rank amateur at best. But I wish I played football more often. If it wasn't for a dodgy knee that dislocates every now and again, I probably would. But unfortunately, one bad challenge and it can have a rather lasting effect. The fact is, I enjoy watching these players produce levels of skill and talent that I could only dream of. Marie asking, Bayern will be back in Munich on Monday, right? Yes, that's correct. They will be back on August 5th from South Korea. And Arpit asking what my prediction is for where Bayern will finish next season. Well, come on, Arpit. You're joining me here on FC Bayern München's live stream of their open training session. The only answer to that question is top of the table. Bayern are going to bounce back. They are going to respond in kind. I think we're going to see a very hungry Bayern team. And as I said, as long as they can avoid the real injury issues that plagued them last season, I do believe that, I think Bayer Leverkusen can't do what Bayer Leverkusen did again this season, what they did last season. But I do think we're going to see Bayern München really bite back. And again, I talk about the hunger levels in this squad. It's not just the young players, it's the established ones as well that want to get back in amongst the silverware. Marcus asking whether I've got any prediction for the match against Spurs. I think this will be a tough one to tell. I'd love to say that Bayern are going to go out in there and win it. I actually think they might lose. The reason being is that Tottenham, Spurs, as they're nicknamed, are further ahead in their preparations. Vincent Kompany pointing out that they've had about 3 or 4 highly competitive encounters already, and as a result, they're just a little further along. They're more into their rhythm. They're closer to being fully fit and match fit as well. And as a result, I think it's going to be a pretty tough test for Bayern. I think we might get a good barometer of where they are in their pre-season preparations. I'm not saying they can't win it, because they absolutely can. Bayern have the talent in this squad, even when it's not at full strength, to beat a team like Tottenham. I just think Tottenham might be fitter. And as a result, if the game's tight and then maybe in the second half, Bayern are having to make a lot of changes to compensate for the fact that there are some tired legs, or they need to manage the workloads of these players, I have a feeling that Tottenham therefore might win the game eventually. So I won't give you a scoreline prediction, but let me just say I think it's going to be a tough game, Marcus. A lot of questions coming in, so forgive me if I don't keep up with all of them, but just keep posting them in the chat. If I missed them the first time, please don't take offense. I will try and get to as many of them as I can, because I love talking to you guys. I love interacting with you, and I'm glad to have the questions, so do keep them coming. And so I'm having to scroll back in the chat a little bit just to make sure I haven't missed too many or any big ones. But I've got one from Sten asking, will Irankunda continue to train with the first team? I think so, especially this summer, absolutely. The question is whether he will continue training with the first team when the season gets underway, or whether he might be used more often in the Bayern reserves team to get him game time. The fact is, he's clearly highly thought of. He really, when you look at it, he says he likes to play preferably as a winger. But when it comes to strikers, Bayern only have 2 on their books right now in Harry Kane and Matthijs Tel. So if Irankunda maybe fancies chances of getting a few minutes as a striker, I think Vincent Kompany might keep him in the senior squad, keep him in training, because that's ultimately where he's going to develop the most. It's just whether they want to get him game time with the reserves as well. But it's certainly an interesting conundrum to have. Personally, I think he'll stay. I think he'll stay with the senior squad. But of course, it's a lot to ask of a young teenager moving halfway across the world, getting used to a new culture, a new city, a new club, new teammates, time away from family as well, all of it. It's a big ask of a young player to settle in quickly. And so as a result, I don't think Kompany will be rushing him into action anytime soon. If he does stay with the senior squad, it really will be training only. But plenty of players that can take him under his wing and make sure that he does settle in nicely. Depeche asking, is Javier Fernandez someone who can make it into the first team this season like Alexander Pavlovic? I think, look, I've been so impressed with him. He's, 17 years old, Spanish youth international. And there's so much to like about his game in terms of his composure, his ability to handle the press. His physical stature for a young player already is impressive. He's got the same height as Alexander Pavlovic. If anything, he's a little bit stronger, seemingly. I just think this season might be a little too early. Alexander Pavlovic was a very special circumstance last season because, let's be honest, he wasn't going to break into the senior squad unless Bayern had all the injuries they had that needed them to call him up as a backup and a squad number. He then, of course, took the chance, really impressed, broke into the first team, and you've got to think it's going to be difficult to keep him out of that midfield this season. But to expect Javier Fernandez to kind of follow in those footsteps as a 17-year-old, I think might be a little too early. I have a feeling next season might be the season where he's thought of. If he continues his development, which again is not a foregone conclusion. As I said, I'm very impressed by him in the pre-season friendlies that we've seen, and I don't think I'm the only one that's had their eye caught by him either. But I think probably one of the most exciting prospects that Bayern have on their books right now. Kartik asking, where's Kingsley Coman? He is still on his holidays. Still recovering from the injury that kept him out of Euro 2024 as well. So unfortunately has not made the trip to South Korea. But the hope is he won't miss much of the start of the season. Marie asking, who is my favourite player? Well, of the current team, Jamal Musiala, I think, hands down. If you're asking all time, I mean, Thomas Müller is someone that He's a couple of years younger than me. I have literally watched his whole career. I can remember him coming off the bench under Louis van Gaal as an 18-year-old. And he is someone who has fascinated me as a footballer throughout his career. His impact on the German national team. He's created some wonderful World Cup memories, even though, you know, I am an Englishman, so if it's England against Germany in an international environment, it's always England that wins my heart. But of course, having lived in Germany for so long, having worked in German football for so long, I cannot help but have a soft spot for this German national team. And Thomas Müller is not your average footballer. You love the way he interacts with the press as well. Always got a little funny quippers in his locker, little joke here and there. Such an endearing character. But as I said, in terms of his ability on the pitch, as someone who wasn't the most technically gifted footballer, but a very hard worker, I can appreciate the fact that he just makes things happen that few other footballers can do. The way he interprets space, some of the touches he produces with those lanky legs of his, you got to love as well. But I mean, I've had so many Bayern players that I've had a soft spot for down the year. David Alaba is another one. I thought he was phenomenal. What a wonderful servant, wonderful player as well. I mean, you talk about players that got you off your seat. Arjen Robben, Frank Ribéry were exceptional for that. You know, Philip Lahm, an incredible servant, just one of the steadiest players ever. And of course, you know, I can name players from further back in the past, and unfortunately I never had the joy of witnessing play for Bayern myself. You know, the likes of Lothar Matthäus, Franz Beckenbauer, you know, those are legendary names. But if you ask me who my favourite player is right now, it's Jamal Musiala, because I love what he does with the football, and he gets me up off my seat so often. But all time, I mean, my hat has to be tipped to Thomas Müller. He, for me, is the greatest of all time. He is the GOAT. Jamal Musiala, I mean, if he stays on the books and he follows in Müller's footsteps, you know, he could easily become the greatest of all time for me, but he's still too young for that right now. Henry asking, when do Bayern and Tottenham play? They've got a double header coming up, Henry. The first is tomorrow in this stadium, the Seoul World Cup Stadium. And the second takes place on the 10th of August. It will be taking place in London. And that will not be the final pre-season friendly for Bayern this summer. The final one will come against the Austrian team WSG Tirol. That game will take place in Unterhaching on the 13th of August. And again, all of these games, ladies and gentlemen, you can follow on FC Bayern TV Plus with live and sometimes exclusive coverage. It is well worth the subscription price, I promise you. But of course, we'll have coverage of press conferences, post-match reactions, highlights as well on all of Bayern's channels, as Konrad Laimer scores an eye-catching goal there, the man who was one of the stars of the show for Austria at Euro 2024. Unfortunately, a heartbreaking end in the round of 16 against Turkey, when they thought, having topped the group of death, that they could make history by breaking beyond the round of 16 for the first time ever in the small nations history. Unfortunately, Turkey had other ideas. So again, Sarkodie, you're asking about a player that is not on the Bayern books, and as a result, I'm not allowed to talk about them. We do not talk about transfer speculation here. We only talk about done deals. The only done deals done this summer for Bayern. Nesri Irinkunda has joined from Adelaide United, although admittedly that deal I think was wrapped up back in January. It wasn't until this summer, though, he moved to Munich, having been left on the books at Adelaide United. Then, of course, we've got the two players brought in from the Premier League, João Paulinho from Fulham and Michael Olise, the French winger from Crystal Palace, and then Hiroki Ito from Stuttgart after an incredible season he had under former Bayern's reserve coach, Sebastian Hoeneß. And so I cannot comment on transfer speculation, and that is why, Sarkodie, I cannot answer your questions. Abiudi, hey James, what does it take for a youngster to get scouted by a big club like Bayern? Well, that is a very big question. Got to admit, difficult to tell, because there's so many ways into the world of football right now, but really when it comes to Bayern, it'll be their network of youth academies that they have, not just in Germany, but around the world. Of course, you hope to get spotted by scouts every now and again too, but it is not an easy thing to do, breaking into the world of professional football. Ultimately, the sooner you can get into the Bayern Academy, the better your chances. JB268TV says, do you think Mathys Tel can be a world-class player in the future? Absolutely. Love what we see from the young Frenchman. I mean, of course, he made a name for himself being this big impact player off the bench last season. I think was averaging a goal involvement under every 90 minutes he played, which is a very impressive return for him. And I think you can see, whether as a winger or a striker, I think that remains to be seen. It's a shame almost that he wasn't playing with France at the Olympics. But Bayern wanted to keep him on the books for pre-season, knowing that Harry Kane was going to be away for quite a while on holiday and with the England national team at the Euros. For people asking, where is Harry Kane, where is Leroy Sané? I'm seeing a lot of those questions. I can tell you there are a couple of players that haven't made the trip to South Korea. It's the players that were either working on their recovery from injury or those that made it deep into the summer tournaments, whether that be Euro 2024 or Copa America. Those players are Harry Kane, Alphonso Davies, Kingsley Coman, Dayot Upamecano and Leroy Sané. And as a result, you will not see those players feature here in this open training session. Wolf Gaming asking, what do you mean holiday? Yeah, football players have holiday as well, Wolf. You know, of course, we'd like them to be in the thick of the action at all time. But they do deserve a chance to recharge the batteries, spend some time with family and friends as well. And of course, these players went deep into their summer tournaments. That's why they're given the time off as well. Because ultimately, you want them coming back, even if not 100% physically fit, you want them coming back 100% mentally fit, and that was something that Vincent Kompany has been talking about as well. Marie, I appreciate the compliment, and it's hard not to enjoy Jamal Musiala as your favourite player right now, has to be said. Holy Lima, love that reaction to the Lima goal as well. Sorry, I'm a bit behind in the chat here, ladies and gentlemen. That's because I'm trying to answer all your wonderful questions that are being sent in, and I do really appreciate it. Love the interaction. And Marcus, I don't work at Zebenstrasse on a daily basis, but I pop down there every now and again. I'll be there tomorrow to commentate the game against Tottenham, albeit that game taking place in Seoul, South Korea. Marie asking, do I like the new Bayern kit? Well, I assume you mean the... Well, I guess, which kit are you talking about? Because they brought out a couple of new ones. Of course, the new home kit's not too shabby, but they've got a new third kit coming out too, which I have to say I like the look of. But then the away kit, I mean, it's got a little something different to it, so there's lots to like about each and every kit. I think my favourite, based on what we've seen, I don't think we have confirmation of what the third kit is going to be, but based on the rumours online, let's say, the third kit looks quite tasty. But I will say this, Marie, as a commentator, the home kit, the red kit, the three-tone red kit is a nightmare because it's so difficult to spot the numbers on the back of the kits. Now, I'm lucky enough that I know these Bayern players well enough, having commentated on them year after year, that it's not so difficult for me to spot. But from a commentator's perspective, someone that maybe isn't as familiar with Bayern München might have a tough time recognising which player is which. JB268TV once again getting in touch saying, do you think Paulinho is the player which we missed last season, speaking of the holding six? Look, he is a type of player that I think can plug a gap that maybe wasn't as naturally plugged last season. Do Bayern need a specialist holding six? Potentially, because it might unlock the prowess of the likes of Goretzka, Kimmich, Rafael Guerreiro, Alexander Pavlovic, who of course so proficient in the build-up play. João Paulinho, someone that thrives in breaking up the play on the opposite side of the ball. And so I think he's certainly going to make a big impact, Paulinho. Difficult to say if he was the missing piece. It's so difficult to say. Would João Paulinho, had he been on the books at Bayern last season, would Bayern have won a trophy? I don't know. It's so difficult to theorise and talk about hypotheticals like that, especially in the world of football. But do I think he's the type of player that will benefit Bayern? Absolutely. And really, I'm so interested to see what exactly Vincent Kompany is thinking when it comes to how he's going to play with this team. Is it with a three-man back line that offers an extra number and offers a bit more width? Will it be with the standard 4-2-3-1 formation with his own little stamp on it? It could go so many different ways. He's got so many different options at his disposal, and Palhinha is a player that could be a starting midfielder, but Konrad Laimer, Leon Goretzka, Joshua Kimmich, Alexander Pavlovic. I mean, take your pick. It's not easy to do between those players as to who's going to start that opening game against Ulm on the 16th of August, and then that opening Bundesliga match against Wolfsburg on the 25th. I think, I mean, JB268TV asking what would be my lineup right now. Oh, so tough. I hate being put on the spot like this because it is so difficult. Can I be honest? Yeah, you know what? I am going to be honest. I'm going to tell you exactly who I'd pick. I'd pick Palhinha and I'd pick Konrad Laimer. That's assuming that Vincent Kompany has seen Palhinha fit in the way he wants him to, that he kind of suits the style of play that Kompany wants to play as well. If not, I'd maybe say Pavlovic and Laimer. Because I'm just such a big Konrad Laimer fan. I think I'd probably keep Kimmich at right back. But I could understand if Kompany wanted to bring him back into midfield. I mean, Sacha Boey has been playing at right back or right wing back in pre-season. And that might be the difference, actually, because Kimmich, I'm not sure I'd play him at right wing back, but I would play him at right back. Different demands, different things needed in that role. And so, yeah, these are the types of questions. I mean, I'm just so excited to find out because we're starting to see the idea and the vision for Vincent Kompany take shape. But ultimately, the clearest idea we'll get of it is when they take on Ulm, or why they take on Wolfsburg. Matthias asking, when did I start watching Bayern München? Well, I mean, I was aware of Bayern München as a club before I left England as a young boy, but I moved to Munich in 1997 at the age of 8. So you can work out my age from all of this as well. But I moved to Munich in 1997 at the age of 8. And I guess that's when I really started watching Bayern. It's a couple of years before my first trip to the Olympiastadion back then. But I've been watching Bayern for a very, very long time now, commentating on them as well, which is, I have to say, an incredible privilege in my career.